So the first DLC for Vermintide 2 has finally arrived with Shadows Over Bogenhafen, a wealthy empire city with an illustrious mercantile history, unfortunately overrun by rat men and the fat boys of Grandfather Nurgle, as so many population centers of the end times are. And our job, as always, is to plunge headlong into the fray and bring righteous vengeance to the invaders. We've been waiting for this patch for a while now, and I've gotten a bunch of time on the beta and the full release, and I wanted to give you all my thoughts. But before we get into my personal opinion, let's go over the basics first. For $10, you're getting access to two new maps, the Pit and Blightreaper, two of the biggest and longest runs in the game, a bunch of new weapon colors that will be making you feel like Mace Windu in no time at all, clothing reskins, and additional cosmetics. One of the biggest selling points of this DLC are the new weekly quests and challenges, which come with their own rewards called Bergen, Hoff, and Strongboxes, which guarantee you a single new weapon skin, a new hat, or a new outfit. And you don't have to own the DLC to play the new maps at all. You can quick play into them or join off friends or randoms who do, so at the very least, the player base is not being split. In addition, there was a relatively substantial patch that came with a bunch of bug fixes while introducing plenty of their own, and a lot of good balance changes to increase the viability of some of the weaker weapons in the game. Both the two-handed hammer and the two-handed sword got some pretty substantial buffs, with great swords in particular making out like bandits, with increased attack range, heavy attacks that now cleave through armored enemies, a new push tab perfect for headshots on armored targets, and additional push range that has made it super strong and super fun to use, where it was once pretty weak against enemy elites. And pretty much every melee weapon in the game deals increased boss damage now, which makes fighting rat ogres and trolls at close range feel better, even though I think they might have gone a little bit too far in the other direction and made some of those encounters too easy. I'm not going to give a full overview of the patch notes. I'll link those in the description and pinned comment for you to peruse at your own leisure, but instead, I want to focus on the maps themselves and my overall impressions of the content at this price point and whether it's all worth it or not. I'll start off positive and cheerful by saying I really like the maps, both of them. They're beautifully designed and a lot of fun to play. I'm not a huge fan of the darkness mechanic. I think it's a bit overused at this point, although it's handled pretty well on Blightreaper with its own little twist. But overall, they have that quintessential Warhammer feel and aesthetic that I love. The Pit is one of the best maps Fat Shark have ever done, with lots of verticality, open spaces, and routes to kind of move through the map wherever you want to go, and it basically encourages multiple playthroughs and gives players a different experience every time. You are heavily encouraged to explore, not only to get a fresh take on your next run, but also because there are a lot of Easter eggs littered throughout the maps, and trying to complete objectives to unlock those while being under constant threat of being pounced by an assassin or lit up like a Christmas tree by a rattling gunner, it really ups that intensity, and it's a lot of fun to play. There are some great set-piece moments like the burning barricade defense, and obviously the Skaven Ironclad finale escape is visually spectacular and a blast every time I've played it. I mean, they're just great maps overall. They're fun to play, and you don't even need to own the content to play it, which is pretty awesome from our perspective. Running through that blazing granary as dozens of enemies drop from the ceiling and surrounded me in their blood rage is absolutely one of the coolest things I've seen from any media in the Warhammer universe. Truly epic stuff. But there are a lot of problems as well, and as you might imagine, quite a bit of backlash headed Fat Shark's way. The first and biggest one I'm going to address are the Bergen, Hoff, and Strongboxes, which to me are a microcosm of the same repeated mistakes they've consistently made regarding loot. I'm going to talk about this for a minute here, because whether you care about visual customization or not, it's literally one of the two major selling points of this DLC, and it was marketed as one of the bigger selling points of Vermintide 2 overall. So yes, I get there are lots of people who just care about the gameplay, and that's fine. I certainly lean way more towards that side of things, which is a big reason why I'm still playing and why I love the game, but this element is still super important, and it should not be glossed over. The gameplay is awesome, the visuals are awesome, but the bug fixing and the bells and whistles like visual customization and item drops continue to be a perpetual thorn in their side and in the sides of their customers. For months now, people have been talking about how difficult it is to get the weapons and skins they want, about how much grind there is in a game that shouldn't be grindy, that we have minimal ways to target specific reds or cosmetics, and that in a universe as rich and flavorful as Warhammer, the skins are all simple recolors instead of drawing inspiration from literally 30 years of lore and making full use of Fat Shark's talented artists. And yet, when the long-awaited patch finally rolls around and the new chests are finally given the red carpet treatment, we're greeted with many of the same mistakes and frustrations we've been complaining about this whole time. The design of the Bergenhofen Strongboxes is stupid. There's no other way for me to say it. They can only be acquired by completing the limited amount of Okri's challenges for the DLC, or by completing the unique weekly challenges only available to DLC owners. But there are a couple of problems with this. Once you've exhausted the very limited supply of challenge boxes, you're left with only one final avenue, completing incredibly grindy weekly quests to get them. The current weekly challenge is 25 quick play completions in a week, which is absurd for about 90% of the Vermintide community. That is insane. I don't know if that's a standard we should be expecting going forward, but I know very few people who can bang out 25 missions in the course of a week, because that is hours and hours and hours worth of game time, even if you're successful in every single run. Like, I play a decent amount, and I'd be very surprised if I hit that target by next week, and while it will carry over and allow us more time to complete it, we miss out on the next quest. So by the second week of the DLC, people are already missing out on major parts of the update. The even bigger issue is that yet again, these boxes are pretty much left up to RNGesus. I've opened around 10 so far, and 3 of them were for Sienna, a character that I literally never play. Many of the drops were for weapons that I don't really enjoy using, and as always, the few skins I dropped weren't really matching very well with the helmets that I already own. Like, I have a wolf plate armor for Kruber that's blue, but all his helmets are different colors, so you don't have anything that actually matches with that helmet. So already, that grindiness and difficulty in getting stuff we want is rearing its ugly head again, and this time it's a huge selling point of the content in the first place. It's the second major content addition of this update behind the maps themselves. I do not understand why we can't return to the quest and contract system we had in Vermintide 1. Like, Fat Shark seem adamant about not adding daily quests for specific, targeted loot, and instead we have to rely on RNGesus yet again to hope we drop something we actually want. And the real kick in the nuts is that currently you can drop weapons and skins for characters and classes you don't even play, which is apparently a bug that they're working on fixing, but it's a thinking moment when one of the few pieces of actual content being added is bugged to that extent. And people were even dropping duplicates in the first few hours after the DLC dropped before Fat Shark hotfixed it. So there were literally 2 major bugs introduced with one of the biggest selling points of this DLC. Now, they're working on it, they're gonna fix it, and I appreciate that, but come on, man, that is frustrating as hell. And these challenges should be daily, not weekly, not grindy, and not boring. Nobody wants to play 25 quick play matches to be rewarded with some random crap tier weapon skin they don't want to use. Give people a real reason to sign in every day with some lively and exciting challenges like melee only Skittergate, or kill a Storm Fiend with only ultimates, or complete X map in less than Y amount of time, and reward them appropriately and often. Give people a targeted set of weapons and skins every day, letting them lock in a specific item to receive in exchange for completed challenges. The blueprint is all there in the first game. I'm not sure why it hasn't been carried over yet. And the duplicate reds, why are they still a thing? Why do we have to wait 7 months for something so simple that wasn't even an issue in Vermintide 1 to be addressed? Now yes, the Bergenhofen Strongboxes are still a step in the right direction, giving players easier access to visual customization than what was there previously. But it's still ultimately based on RNG, when the majority of the community has been asking for months to move away from that kind of system. Now, moving away from the loot box rant for a second here, I've seen some people argue that all you're getting for the DLC price is cosmetics, because the maps are technically available for everyone, and that they're kind of framing that like a bad thing, but that seems pretty disingenuous to me. That's a pretty fallacious argument, I think. Creating and designing these runs cost money. It was by far the most labor-intensive portion of this content pack, and they're really good maps at that. So the only reason Fat Shark are able to offer them to everyone is because they expect their fanbase to purchase it, and because they'd rather not split their players. If no one bought this content, they would never offer free maps like this again. So whether you yourself are willing to buy it isn't the end of the discussion, because someone else is. The only reason you're getting that content in the first place, if you don't buy it, is because someone else was willing to pay for it. So I really think people should rethink that argument and try to claim that you're paying 10 bucks for cosmetics, because that's not true at all. The community is still paying for the maps, as they should, if they think it's worth the price. I just don't buy into the whole devs should work for free and release free maps to please us thing, because I don't work for free, you don't work for free, Fat Shark shouldn't work for free either. Just vote with your wallet. Like, if it's worth it to you, buy it. If it's not, don't. I'm just sharing my thoughts here and hopefully helping you all make a better informed decision on whether to purchase or not. But I do want to leave some constructive feedback for the maps themselves before we finish up and I give my final conclusion on what's offered here. From a story perspective, I definitely feel like Shadows Over Bogenhafen was a little bit rushed. Fat Shark released an amazing trailer with the backstory of the Blightreaper and how it came to rest in the vaults of a Sigmarite temple in Bergenhafen, but we get very little actual interaction or discussion about the sword in-game at all. When I played the beta, I was sure that the finale of the second map was just a placeholder, waiting to reveal like a full boss fight or some kind of epic showdown once the DLC finally went live, which is actually exactly what happened with Krench in Stromdorf for Vermintide 1. He was not in the beta, but showed up for the final release. But unfortunately, it's not what we got here. And from a gameplay perspective, the biggest problem I have with the DLC by far is the finale of the Blightreaper map. It's just super anticlimactic. The entire map is named for this epic, evil rune sword you interact with for literally only like 30 seconds. We don't see what happens to it once we get out of the chapel. We don't see if it's destroyed or hidden away. There's no boss we have to wrestle it away from. And there's not much going on in the finale at all. It's very static, with static spawns that play out the exact same way every single time. It's really easy, and I've not been challenged or killed a single time I've played it once. I really think it needs something to spice it up to make it more dynamic and interesting, and at the very least, throwing in a generic boss spawn could be really good there, because there's a lot of verticality and space to play with in the chapel that's kind of unused. But honestly, I'd like to see a much longer, much more harrowing escape as we make a break for the docks. The way it is now, you grab the sword, walk out the door before the next wave drops down, and you're home free like 5 seconds later. You don't get to use it at all. You don't get to use the sword, which I think would be awesome. I mean, that'd be a really cool way to make that mechanic more interesting. Use it, but you lose a lot of health every time you swing it or something, but you can just like obliterate waves. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot more they could have done with it, and the whole thing just kind of feels underwhelming. The map is great, but the finale needs some extra spice and some extra love for sure, which is where the pit really has it beat, with what I would consider as a very exciting and very satisfying conclusion to a run with a lot of new gameplay elements and stunning visuals. So overall, I'd say the amount of content on display in Shadows Over Bogenhafen is slightly underwhelming and worse than Karak Asgraz and Castle Drakenfels at a higher price. Those were, I believe, $8 for 3 maps and new weapons as well, while there are no new weapons included here and only 2 runs. But the 2 maps are still very high quality, they are very enjoyable to play, and are very much worthy additions to a great series of games. Now, Fat Shark needs to start being more receptive to feedback and start actually implementing what people are asking for. Fixes for red dupes, less grinding, more targeted ways to get loot, less RNG. They keep saying they're listening to what people are saying, and in some areas of the game, like balancing, they certainly are, but with the really big stuff that can keep player retention high, they keep stumbling, and there are still lots of balance problems with talents and weapons that are far behind the curve that really need an update. It is a fantastic game that I will definitely be playing well into the future, and I will continue supporting Fat Shark as a company because I love the stuff they make, but they need to improve and get their act together. It is frustrating to see them retread the same path and make so many of the same mistakes they made with Vermintide 1 in regards to weapon balance, game design, RNGesus, and grinding being pretty much omnipresent in basically every facet of the game, and huge gaps of minimal communication, bug fixing, and content additions. Thankfully, I think we're at the point in this game's life cycle where things will pick up and the game will consistently get better at a much faster rate. This definitely happened with Vermintide 1 once Karak Asgraz finally dropped after a long wait, so I think we got plenty to look forward to here, but I think they missed their chance to strike while the iron was super hot after release and really send V2 into the stratosphere, and unfortunately, I think that was avoidable given what they could have learned from the first game. Ultimately, if you're a huge fan of Vermintide and want new content, and want more content in the future, I think Shadows Over Bogenhafen is worth your consideration, but you definitely might want to wait for a sale, and for people who are on the fence or are more casually interested in the series, I highly suggest waiting to see if fixes come before taking the plunge. I think Fat Shark can and should do better, and I look forward to them knocking it out of the park with the next content update. Thank you all for watching. Indie Pride, signing out for now.